Recording started.
Hello, good afternoon, students. Uh, we are back again, and in this video, we will discuss exclusively um, the questions from the story, that is, reading with insight. Here, the first question is: do you think that the third level was a medium of escape for Charlie? Why? Well, yes, definitely it is a medium of escape for Charlie. The present world is full of worries, fears, wars, stress, tensions, etc. Uh, Charlie has escapist tendencies. We all want to escape from harsh realities for a moment, but when this feeling of escape overpowers us, uh, it becomes a problem or a psychiatric disorder with us. Now, Charlie is, has a hobby of stamp collection, and he is nostalgic. He thinks that past is pleasant, and he feels that mm, they used to have a simple life in past. So you know he has escapist tendencies, and he mm, fantasizes very often. Even you know even if we ignore the third level fantasy of Charlie, even then we find that he loses his way in the Grand Central, and sometimes he comes out in the lobby of a hotel, or sometimes in some other avenue. So he has escapist tendencies, and the third level is definitely a medium of escape uh, for Charlie. Uh, he associates it with Grand Central, and the third level actually doesn't exist, and it's a kind of a refuge, you know. For Charlie, the third level symbolizes uh, everything pleasant in life, and he fantasizes that he has been in the third level, and he very much wishes to go into the third level. So it's a kind of a wish fulfillment for him. Now, what do you infer from Sam's letter to Charlie? Well, Sam's letter to Charlie clearly suggests that past is simpler, that people used to have a much less complicated life in the past. They had time, they had leisure, and they enjoyed life more. And it also indirectly highlights Charlie's desire to escape in the past, to escape to the past, to escape to the third level. Through this letter, in fact, the author justifies Charlie's um, attempt to try to find out the third level. He introduces an element of fiction through this letter, and um, so all these aspects have to be included in it. Uh, you know, I mean, it suggests that even a psychiatrist, can face such a problem as wish fulfillment or a waking dream, or you know um, an overpowering escapist tendency. So all these points then. Now the modern world is full of insecurity, fear, war, worry, and stress. Now, the question is, what are the ways in which we attempt to overcome them? Well, there are different ways. Some people indulge in stamp collection, some take recourse to music, others, uh, you know, love painting. There are different ways of um, getting a kind of a refuge or shelter, or getting a bit relaxed, or escaping from reality. Now, the fine arts are one way of mm, finding refuge. We often go back to past in our fantasies, and it depends from person to person. Some people, you know for example, would take a walk. They would shed their stress by way of physical exercises. And in the modern world, there are other ways, for example, adventure sports, mountaineering, or other hobbies, which give them a temporary kind of a refuge from these harsh realities. Now, do you see an intersection of time and space in the story? Yes, of course, there is an intersection of time and space in the story. Uh, the author weaves past, present, and future together. Charlie lives in the present, but he, escapes to the past, and this tendency of escaping to the past uh, throws light on future as well. And we envisage I mean, the author envisages uh, a more complex future. You know, so in fact, when Charlie fantasizes, he is in the past. Otherwise, he is in the present, and even he experiences the life in Galesburg in 1894. So this way, even the places are intersected. The spaces, the places, and mm, mm, the Grand Central becomes a kind of a intersecting point, a point where different places join, and a point where um, different times join for Charlie. While living in the present, he goes to the past and experiences the life in Galesburg. Sam's letter too is, in a way, you know, an effort to mm, refer to the past. It definitely refers to the past, and interestingly, Charlie finds it in the present. So it again is an effort to mix past with the present, suggesting that while living in the present, we can find refuge in the past, even if not, although not in the way in which Charlie did, because for him it was a problem. Otherwise, looking back to the past may be a source of consolation and refuge for all of us. Now, question number 5. Apparent illogicality sometimes turns out to be a futuristic projection. Discuss. Yes, apparently there are various illogical events in the story. For example, Charlie losing his way, um, coming to the lobby of the hotel from the station, and then he begins wandering in the third level, although the third level doesn't exist. Then he finds that first day cover in which he discovers the letter of Sam. All these are apparently illogical elements in the story, but indirectly it's a futuristic projection because it suggests that past was simple or simpler. Present is full of complexity, so we seek refuge in the past. And considering the present in mind, the future is going to be more complex, even more complex than the present. So, in this sense, you know, it's very much futuristic projection. You can elaborate then. Philately, this is the name of the author. Philately helps keep the past alive. Discuss other ways in which this is done. Uh, yes, of course, he keeps the past alive, and um, this question, in fact, is not so clear. Um, there are other ways like stamp collecting and I mean, they have a sub question here. Please, I didn't read it. Um, what do you think of the human tendency to constantly move between past, present, and future? Yes. So, fantasizing, stamp collection, and Sam's letter. All these, in fact, help to keep the past alive, and this is very much a human tendency to keep oscillating, to keep moving between past and present and even future. Uh, we are in the present, and very often we begin thinking of the past, recalling things of the past, our past experiences, and sometimes we start imagining how our future would be, what kind of future we can have, and that is, of course, a fantasy. But then, you know, um, there are predictions, and there are we I won't call them predictions. There are calculations. We calculate, we speculate as to what kind of life we are going to have in future, depending on the um, present life or the signs of the uh, present day scenario. Considering the present day scenario, we very often think of the past. Authors and writers have done so. H.G. Wells has presented the future in his works, and an ordinary man also sometimes, you know, forms his view of future, analyzing the present and thinking of the past. Now, they say you have read the story by Jayant Narlikar in Hornbill in class 11th. Now, compare the interweaving of fantasy and reality in the two stories. So, I have referred to this story earlier. In Narlikar's story, Professor Gayton has to deliver a lecture on the topic what course history would have taken if the Marathas had defeated Abdali. Now, just by chance, he meets an accident and he falls unconscious, and during that state of unconsciousness, he begins thinking or imagining the life it would have been in case of Maratha's victory. And the author depicts um, that kind of India, um, and Gayton's, um, you know, vision of India. Now, he also, should I say, dream or imagine or fantasizes that uh, there was going to be a lecture and the chair was empty. Nobody was chairing the lecture. He went to the stage and occupied the chair. The crowd went mad and started um, throwing, I don't remember, stones or eggs, etc. And this brought Gaten back to life, back to reality, to the present. Uh, so he underwent a curious experience, and that story also shows an element of fiction because he had been in his fantasy, he had been in a library, and in his book, in his pocket, he discovered a torn piece of a page from of the book from that same library. Now, in this story, Charlie comes from the office to the from his office to the station to take a train to his home. There are only two levels, and he wanders in the third level. Then he comes back to reality, and towards the end of the story, there is Sam's letter, who um, you know um, turns out to be Charlie's psychiatrist friend. So fantasy and reality are interwoven together in both stories. Uh, I would say in an interesting way. In this story, perhaps the mixing is more effective than um, the one by Narlikar. Um, Obviously, the stories in which fantasies and fantasy and reality is mixed up, they are a bit complicated, but they are also very interesting. So these are the questions then. I would now advise you to go through the story in detail and try to write down the answer to the questions. And if you want, you can quickly go through that story by Jayant Narlikar. I mean, reread that story from a hornbill just to have an experience of it, just to recall all that. And so you will be in a better position to compare the two stories. And to me, the most important question in the story is, that third level is the medium of escape for Charlie. Um, so um, don't get confused by the language. Whatever I have said, take it seriously. Try to understand it. Uh, and now we have completed what our first sessional course from Hornbill and our first sessional course from Vistas also, because the material on the enemy, the enemy and should the wizard hit mummy. The material on these two lessons is available in on the web page of our school. Please visit that page, download that material, and study those two lessons as well. Now, when I meet you again, I will discuss with you formal and informal invitations that are a part of the first sessional course. That usually are the part of the first sessional course. I don't know what actually are they going to do for the sessionals this time, because we are still not sure when the schools will reopen and what's going to happen, because the situation is very messy. Mr. Kejriwal in Delhi says that they're not going to open the schools soon, but then there are rumors that perhaps they would open that admission process and schools in September and maybe in October. Let's see what happens. We are not sure. Uh, Now, what I plan to do is that I'll give you a summary of the enemy and should the wizard hit mummy. Instead of giving you all the difficult words and do it word to word, I'll give you a summary of it, and I'll discuss questions and give you answers to those questions. Um, and the details you can study from the material available on the web page of the school. But you see, it will take time. We'll see. We, in any case, will try to finish it all by 20 or 25th of September, so that we can move to the other part of our course. Uh, So it depends. I hope I'll find time because um, I have to complete a poem with the elective English students, and then I'll um, come back to you. Invitations I'll do with you. After doing invitations, then I'll give you a break of about 10 days or so. Um, in the meantime, you can prepare and study and send in your queries if you wish. And then when I come back, you know, I'll discuss the summary. So when we meet again, maybe in a few days' time, we will take up invitations, both formal and informal. And after that, I'll give you a break of about 10 or 12 days, uh, and then we will see what I mean the availability of time. You see, depending on that, I will take up the rest of the course. That is, first the summary of the two lessons, and then the rest. Well, I don't know why. I'm feeling a bit exhausted. I'm so sorry. Um, but anyway, um, you see, we have come to a close of today's session. Um, so let's see if I'm likely to meet you on Monday night now. I mean, Tuesday morning. Tuesday morning or Wednesday morning. We'll try to finish invitations then. So for now, take care. Thank you very much, and a very goodbye from me.
Stop button.